My husband left me at a gas station as a joke. Hours later, I came home to find my sister wearing my robe, holding a glass of wine, and saying, "He thought you'd never come back." I just smiled, grabbed my camera, and said, "Good, because this is going online." I always thought betrayal would be loud. A screaming match, a dramatic confrontation, maybe even a slap across the face in a crowded restaurant. Turns out, it's quiet. It sneaks up on you when you're least expecting it, settling into the corners of a conversation, in the silences between words, in the small hesitations you don't notice until they're too obvious to ignore. That's how I found out my marriage was over. Not in some explosive argument or through a confession of guilt, but in the stillness of a gas station parking lot, standing alone with nothing but a crumpled $20 bill in my hand. It started with a road trip. Jonah and I had been married for 6 years, together for 9. Our relationship had started off strong, full of late-night drives with the windows down, whispered conversations under warm blankets, and promises of forever. But somewhere along the way, things changed. The easy companionship we once had turned into something else, something heavier. Lately, he had been different. Distant. Quicker to criticize, slower to apologize. Conversations felt like walking through a minefield, every response carefully measured to avoid setting him off. He made me feel small in ways I couldn't quite put into words. But I still loved him. Or at least, I loved the version of him I remembered. So when he suggested a weekend trip to Indianapolis, I told myself it was a good thing. A fresh start. The drive started off fine. Jonah was in a decent mood, tapping his fingers against the steering wheel as he hummed along to the radio. I stared out the window, watching the scenery blur past, trying to convince myself that this trip would fix everything. It didn't. Somewhere along the way, he started picking at me. "You never appreciate my sense of humor," he muttered, shaking his head after I didn't laugh at some offhand comment. "I appreciate it when it's actually funny," I replied, trying to keep my voice light. That was the wrong thing to say. He went quiet for a long time after that, his fingers tightening on the wheel, jaw clenched. The air between us grew thick, suffocating. I watched the signs pass, counting the miles until our next stop, mentally calculating how much longer I'd have to sit in this tense silence. When he pulled into the gas station, I didn't think anything of it. "Grab me a Gatorade," he said, tossing a 20 onto my lap. I sighed but got out, stretching my legs as I walked toward the entrance. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside, the cool blast of air conditioning a welcome relief from the thick summer heat. I took my time, picked up the drink, grabbed a snack for myself, and stood in line behind an older woman counting out change for her lottery tickets. And then I stepped back outside. The parking space where our car had been was empty. I froze. At first, I thought I had just missed him moving to another pump. Maybe he was circling the lot, messing around. I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. A slow, creeping realization settled into my chest. He left me. I looked around, scanning the lot, expecting, hoping, to see our car pulling back in, Jonah grinning behind the wheel, ready to call me an idiot for thinking he'd actually drive off. But there was nothing. I stood there for 5 minutes. 10. The old man behind the counter must have been watching, because eventually, he stepped outside, hands tucked into his stained apron. "Everything all right, miss?" I turned toward him, swallowing against the lump in my throat. My husband. The words felt foreign in my mouth. He left. The man frowned, glancing at the empty parking lot, then back at me. On purpose? I forced out a laugh, a shaky, uncertain sound. I don't know, but I did. I knew. I felt it in my bones. It took me almost an hour to get a ride home. The Uber driver, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, didn't ask any questions. She must have seen the look on my face, the way I clenched my fists in my lap, my jaw locked tight, my breathing uneven. I stared out the window the entire ride back, my mind buzzing with every possible explanation. Maybe this was some kind of twisted joke. Maybe he was trying to prove a point. Maybe he was angry enough to teach me a lesson, but not cruel enough to actually mean it. But then I thought about the way he had looked at me lately. Not with love. Not even with frustration. But with something else. Something cold. The closer we got to home, the more that coldness seeped into my own chest. By the time the driver pulled up in front of our house, I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was just empty. I stepped out of the car, thanked the driver in a voice that didn't sound like my own, and walked up to the front door. It wasn't locked. I pushed it open, stepping inside, my fingers tightening around my phone. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Vanilla and sandalwood. My candle. The one I only ever lit when I wanted to relax. The second thing I noticed was the music. Soft jazz, playing through our Bluetooth speaker. And then I saw her. My sister, Sadie, sitting on my couch in my robe, holding my wine glass in one hand, looking entirely too comfortable for someone who didn't live here. She didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, she looked mildly amused. "Oh," she said, taking a slow sip of wine. "You made it back." The words sank in like stones, dropping one by one into the pit of my stomach. My voice came out quiet, eerily calm. "Where's Jonah?" She lifted one shoulder in a lazy shrug. "He thought you'd never come back." I stared at her. She didn't even flinch. She knew. They planned this. I should have felt something. Anger, pain, betrayal. Instead, I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that made her pause, just for a second. Then, without a word, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Sadie watched me, her smirk faltering. "Good," I murmured, raising the phone. "Because this is going online." And then I took the picture. Sadie blinked, caught off guard. "Are you serious?" she scoffed, shifting slightly on the couch. "What the HLL are you doing?" I took another photo, just for good measure. Click. The soft shutter sound filled the silent space between us. Her expression darkened. "Delete that." I tilted my head, pretending to think about it. "No," she set her wine glass down a little too forcefully, the red liquid sloshing dangerously close to the edge. "Jesus, you're being dramatic." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Dramatic?" I echoed, raising my brows. "That's funny, coming from the woman sitting in my house, drinking my wine, in my robe, after my husband abandoned me at a gas station." She rolled her eyes. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." "Am I?" I took a slow step forward, watching as she stiffened slightly, her fingers curling over the armrest. "Tell me, Sadie, what's the right amount of proportion for walking into your own house and finding your sister making herself at home while your husband is nowhere to be found?" She didn't answer. Instead, she shifted uncomfortably, her mouth pressing into a thin line. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the jazz still playing in the background, like a sick joke. Then, I heard the front door creak open behind me. Footsteps. I didn't even need to turn around. I knew who it was. Jonah. There was a pause, one of those heavy, suffocating pauses that say more than words ever could. Then, shit. I turned slowly, phone still in my hand. Jonah stood in the doorway, his face pale, eyes flicking between me and Sadie. He looked exactly how I thought he would, like a man who had been caught in the middle of something he thought he could control. I stared at him, waiting for an excuse, a lie, a plea, something. Instead, he let out a breath and ran a hand through his hair, looking at Sadie like she was the problem now. "What did you do?" he muttered under his breath. Sadie scoffed. "Oh, don't even, she's the one acting crazy." I barked out another laugh, shaking my head. Unbelievable. Jonah finally turned his attention to me, his expression shifting into something more careful, controlled. "Listen, I know," I cut him off. "You listen." He shut his mouth. I took another step forward, my fingers tightening around my phone. "You left me at a gas station. In the middle of nowhere. And then you came back here." To her. I motioned towards Sadie without looking away from him. "So before you even open your mouth to try and feed me whatever bullshit excuse you've been rehearsing in your head, just know that I'm done." Jonah's jaw tightened. "You don't even know what's going on." "Then explain it," I shot back. Silence. That's what I thought. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "You know what? It doesn't even matter." I lifted my phone again. Jonah's eyes flicked to the screen, his expression shifting slightly. He knew. He knew exactly what I was about to do. His hand twitched at his side, like he wanted to grab it from me. But he didn't. Instead, he glanced at Sadie again, his face twisting into something unreadable. I turned the screen toward him. It wasn't just the picture of Sadie anymore. It was the video. From the security camera. A clear shot of both of them. On the couch. At 2 a.m. I watched as the last bit of fight drained from his face. And then I smiled. Jonah's face turned a sickly shade of pale, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. His eyes darted back and forth between me and the phone, as if he was calculating his next move. As if there was anything he could say that would make this better. Sadie, on the other hand, had the nerve to laugh. A short, sharp sound that made my blood boil. "Oh, come on," she scoffed, crossing her legs and leaning back into the couch like this was some minor inconvenience. "You're really going to play the victim here?" I turned my head slowly, staring at her in disbelief. "I am the victim, Sadie." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so dramatic." "Jonah and I don't," I cut in, my voice dangerously quiet. She blinked, her mouth snapping shut. "Jonah," still frozen near the door, finally exhaled through his nose, rubbing a hand down his face. Look, this isn't how I wanted you to find out. I let out a slow, steady breath. So you did want me to find out? He hesitated. Just for a second. But it was long enough. Something in my chest cracked open. He never meant to stay. He never meant to fix things. This trip, the fight, the way he had left me at that gas station, it had all been leading to this moment. I was never supposed to come home. Jonah must have seen the realization settle on my face because he suddenly stepped forward, his hands out in some pathetic attempt at damage control. Look, I took a step back and he stopped. Don't, I said again. My voice was steadier now. Colder. I felt like I was watching this all happen from the outside, like my mind had detached itself just to keep me from collapsing. Sadie let out another scoff. Jesus, it's not like we planned this from the beginning. I turned to her again, feeling my fingers tighten around my phone. How long? She hesitated. I took another step forward. How long? Jonah flinched, but Sadie, she smirked. A slow, lazy smirk that sent a shiver down my spine. Long enough, she said, tilting her head. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. That was all I needed to hear. Sadie was the type of person who loved the last word. She liked winning, no matter the cost. And she thought she had won now, she thought she had beaten me. I could feel Jonah watching me, waiting for some kind of reaction. Anger, tears, begging, but I just stared. And then, ever so slowly, I smiled. It wasn't the smile they were expecting. Jonah shifted uncomfortably. What? I lifted my phone, tapping the screen once. You'll see. And then I hit send. The second my thumb pressed send, something shifted in the room. Sadie's smirk faltered, just slightly. Jonah stiffened, his eyes flicking between me and the phone, his breathing uneven. What did you just do? He asked, his voice tight. I locked my phone and slipped it into my pocket, taking my time as I looked between the two of them. Let them sit in the silence. Let them wonder. Then I shrugged. You'll find out soon enough. Jonah took a step toward me, but I held up a hand. Don't. He hesitated, then glanced at Sadie, who was now sitting up straighter, her confidence slipping, just a little. Jesus, you're being childish, she muttered, running a hand through her hair. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Childish? My voice came out lighter than I felt. No, childish would be throwing a tantrum, screaming, flipping furniture. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. This is calculated. Sadie's eyes narrowed. What the HLL does that mean? I didn't answer. I just turned and walked toward the kitchen, listening to the quiet shuffle of Jonah's nervous movements behind me. I could feel the weight of their eyes on my back, the growing panic settling between them. I opened the fridge, took out a bottle of water, and twisted the cap off slowly. Too slowly. Dragging out the silence, stretching the tension until it snapped tight around them. Then, just before I took a sip, I said, check your phone. I didn't have to look to know they both went for their phones immediately. The rustling of fabric. The quiet, rapid tapping of fingers. The small gasp from Sadie as she saw it. I turned back around, taking in the sight of her face draining of color. Jonah's eyes were locked onto his screen, his breathing sharp. No. Sadie shot up from the couch. Are you fucking kidding me? I smiled again. Oh, I was very serious. They had just seen what I sent. And I waited. Let them sit in their panic. Jonah looked up at me, his jaw tight. You put this online? His voice cracked slightly at the end. I told you I would. I took a slow sip of water, swallowing before I spoke again. Did you think I was bluffing? Sadie's hand clenched into a fist at her side. You posted a fucking video of us? I tilted my head, feigning innocence. Oh, it's not just a video. It's the video. Jonah's fingers twitched around his phone as he scrolled, his face turning red. Jesus Christ, it's everywhere. Yeah, I said simply, walking past them and settling onto the couch. Turns out, people really love a good betrayal story. Sadie stormed toward me, her face twisted in anger. Take it down. No, she let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. You're insane. You actually lost your fucking mind. I shrugged. Maybe. Jonah groaned, dragging a hand down his face. You don't get it, do you? His voice was shaking now, like he was struggling to hold himself together. This is real life, not some stupid reality show. You can't just put people's business out there like this. I arched a brow. Oh, my business? My marriage? My home? My husband? I gestured between them. You made that my business the second you two decided to do this. Sadie scoffed, crossing her arms. God, you sound pathetic. Jonah, still staring at his screen, suddenly froze. His fingers hovered over the screen, his entire body going still. That's when I knew. He saw the comments. The thousands of them. The reposts. The shares. The absolute fury from people who had no idea who we were, but were fully invested in my story now. He knew this was bigger than just the three of us now. Jonah let out a slow, shaky breath. This could ruin me. Sadie frowned. What? She grabbed her phone again, scrolling fast now. Her face twisted in confusion, then something else, fear. I watched as reality hit them, hard and fast. It wasn't just my little corner of the internet anymore. This had gone viral. People knew Jonah's name now. People were finding his job, his colleagues, his clients. They were angry. They were digging. Sadie's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. I set my water bottle down and leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Oops. Jonah's head snapped up, his eyes wild. You need to fix this. I just smiled. Jonah was unraveling right in front of me. His breathing had turned shallow, his fingers gripping his phone so tightly I thought he might break it. He knew. He knew there was no undoing this. No quick fix. No smooth talk to get himself out of it. Sadie, on the other hand, wasn't quite there yet. She still thought she could claw her way out of this. This is defamation, she snapped, shoving her phone in my face. Do you understand that? You just slandered your own family, your own husband, publicly. You could get sued for this, you idiot. I gave her a slow blink, then turned my gaze to Jonah. Are you gonna sue me, Jonah? His lips parted slightly, like he might try to say something, might try to issue some kind of warning, but then his eyes flicked back to his screen. To the comments. The messages. The emails. The ones from his boss. His clients. His shoulders sagged. No, he muttered. It wasn't an answer to me. It was just acceptance. Sadie whipped toward him, incredulous. What do you mean, no? Jonah rubbed a hand down his face, inhaling sharply through his nose. She didn't say anything that wasn't true. Sadie let out a short, bitter laugh. Are you fucking kidding me? I just watched. Enjoyed the moment. Sadie was losing patience. She turned back to me, her face full of frustration, panic creeping into her features now. You think this is funny? I tilted my head, letting my gaze drift over her. No, I said. I think it's poetic. She made a disgusted sound, throwing her hands up. What do you even want? Oh, I'd been waiting for that question. I stood up slowly, smoothing out my shirt. Well, first off, I said, turning to Jonah. I want you out. His head snapped up. Sadie's mouth fell open. What? I smiled. You heard me. Get your shit and leave. Jonah let out a heavy breath, shaking his head. Come on, we need to talk about this first. No, I interrupted, my voice cool and even. We don't. Sadie stepped forward, her tone sharpening. This is his house too. Not for long, I cut in. Then, I pulled my ace. I already called a lawyer. Jonah's eyes went wide. Sadie's mouth hung open like a fish. I wanted a divorce before I even walked through that door, I said simply, watching the weight of those words sink into them. The paperwork is already in motion. You're gonna be served soon, Jonah. He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. He knew I wasn't bluffing. Sadie, meanwhile, looked like she had been punched in the gut. You're a spiteful bitch. I smiled sweetly. Oh, honey. I haven't even started yet. Jonah cleared his throat, like he was trying to salvage something, anything. Listen, we don't have to make this ugly. I arched a brow. You abandoned me at a gas station, Jonah. You've been fucking my sister for God knows how long, in our home, drinking our wine, probably sleeping in our bed. Trust me, this is already ugly. Sadie, still fuming, crossed her arms. And what do you think happens next? You get the house? You get to play the heartbroken wife while we look like the bad guys. She let out a humorless laugh. Newsflash, you're not the first woman to get cheated on. Get over yourself. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I sighed. Oh, Sadie. I put a hand over my heart. You really don't get it, do you? She frowned, shifting slightly. Get what? I pulled my phone back out and held up the screen, letting them both see. See, this isn't just some little internet story anymore, I said, watching the panic bloom in Jonah's expression again. People know your names. People care about this. I scrolled, tilting my head. I mean, look at this. A company just fired Jonah based on the backlash alone. That was fast. Jonah's breath hitched. He grabbed his phone, frantically scrolling. When he finally saw the email, his face went gray. No, he muttered. His hand trembled slightly as he tapped the screen, then again, as if refreshing the email would make it disappear. Sadie's head whipped toward him. Wait. What? What does she mean? Jonah didn't answer. He just stared at his screen, completely and utterly still. Sadie grabbed her phone and scrolled too, her movements jerky and panicked now. Then, suddenly, her breath caught. I smiled, tilting my head. Oh, Sadie, did you really think your job wouldn't see it too? Her face snapped up to mine, eyes wide. No, they wouldn't, I shrugged. Turns out, a lot of companies don't love being associated with homewreckers. Jonah ran a shaking hand through his hair, looking like he was about to be sick. Sadie, though? She looked furious. You ruined us, she shouted. I gave her a slow blink. No, sweetheart. You ruined you. Her breathing was uneven now, wild-eyed and desperate. She turned to Jonah, smacking his arm. Say something. Do something. Jonah didn't even look at her. He was still staring at his screen, hollowed out, like he was watching his entire life crumble in front of him. I exhaled, stretching my arm slightly. Welp, this has been fun, but I think we're done here. Jonah finally looked at me, his eyes heavy, tired. What do you want? I let out a soft laugh. Oh, Jonah. I picked up my purse from the table, walking toward the door. I already got it. And with that, I walked out. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't shout or cry or throw things. I just left. Because the thing about revenge? The best kind doesn't need yelling or violence or cruelty. Sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is just letting people watch themselves fall apart.